Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. The evening sun casts long shadows across the manicured lawns of Hampton Manor. Standing at the edge of the limestone terrace, Alexander Winston, a crystal whiskey glass in his hand, silently watched the event planners put the finishing touches on his daughter Emily's engagement celebration. At 52, he carries himself with the poise and confidence of a man who built a company from nothing. A man who built one of Manhattan's most prestigious architectural firms with perseverance and vision. Dad. Emily's voice came from the end of the lawn. She was resplendent in a champagne-colored gown, and her dark hair was elegantly coiffed. The florist wanted to know where to place the extra floral arrangements. Alexander smiled and pointed to the garden entrance. Just follow your mom's plan, honey. Today is your big day. Victoria Winston stepped out of the house, the 47-year-old stepping into designer heels that made a crisp sound as they struck the limestone floor. While she still managed to turn heads, Alexander had begun to notice a cold hardness in her eyes that hadn't been there when they first met. She scrutinized the site's preparations with the precision of a military commander. "The Carmichaels just called," she spoke, not even looking at Alexander. "They'll be late. I told them we'd start at 6 sharp, whether they came or not." She turned to Emily. "Honey, go check the cutlery arrangement. These staff members can't even get the most basic instructions right." Emily glanced hesitantly at her father and Alexander gave her a gentle nod. "Go ahead. Your mom is the best at these things." As Emily walks away, Alexander's son Marcus emerges from the house, the 24-year-old already looking uncomfortable in his tailored suit. He's literally a carbon copy of Alexander in his youth, just missing that hunger that drove Alexander to success. "Glover just arrived," Marcus announced as he adjusted his tie. "Richard said he has some papers he needs you to sign, Dad." Alexander suppressed the urge to frown. "It's your sister's day. Business can wait." "It's just a couple signatures," Victoria interjected pointedly. "Richard says it's a routine transfer of assets, and it's better to get it taken care of before the guests arrive." Before Alexander had time to respond, his youngest daughter, Sarah, 21, came bounding down the terrace steps. "Mom, Mrs. Patterson is asking about the seating arrangement again. She insisted she couldn't sit at table 6. A crack appeared in Victoria's perfectly maintained comportment. "That woman?" She strides off in the direction of the tent, Sarah following her. Richard Glover's arrival was accompanied by the sound of tires running over a circular driveway. Alexander watched as his attorney of 15 years got out of his Mercedes with a briefcase, followed by his wife, Susan, holding a beautifully wrapped gift that was clearly more than just an engagement greeting. "Alexander!" Richard's voice echoed across the lawn. He was tall and elegant in appearance, with well-groomed silver hair and the kind of charming smile that made hundreds of clients trust him with their legal matters. "It's wonderful here, isn't it, Susan?" Richard's wife, Susan, a quiet woman who seems to have always been a little intimidated by her husband, nodded. "It's beautiful, really beautiful." Richard patted Alexander on the shoulder. A gesture that had once appeared to be as close as a brother's now felt a bit presumptuous to Alexander. "Getting those asset transfer papers ready for you to sign. Of course, it's all routine and perfectly fine until after the party." "Sure, sure," Alexander responded, noticing Richard's gaze briefly glancing to Victoria, who was reprimanding one of the waiters about the placement of the champagne glasses. "Let's put the briefcase in my study first." Inside the study, Richard placed his briefcase on the mahogany desk with skillful casualness. "Really, Alexander, it's just some standard paperwork. The Jensen estate transfer papers mostly. Maybe we can get rid of that now while it's quiet." Alexander picks up a framed picture on the table that is Emily's college graduation picture, and the whole family laughs. "It feels like a lifetime ago." "Richard, you've been my attorney for 15 years. No, more than an attorney, you've been my friend. When did that relationship start to change?" The smile on Richard's face flickered almost imperceptibly. "I don't know what you mean," Alexander murmured from his study. "Will, business can wait until Monday." A fleeting look of annoyance or fear swept across Richard's face before his professional mask was back on. Of course, family first." The door to the study was pushed open and Marcus walked in. "Uncle Richard, Dad. Mom wants to know if you're done talking. The guests are starting to arrive." Richard's entire demeanor shifted instantly, and as he turned to Marcus, Alexander noticed his son's posture subtly become more respectful as well. "Marcus, my boy, how's the law clerkship going?" "It's great," Marcus exclaimed. "The partners say I'm very talented." "That's because you have an innate talent," Richard said in an almost fatherly tone. "And of course, good coaching." Alexander observed the conversation with interest, taking every nuance of interaction to heart. "We should go out. Emily wants to take pictures." The garden party culminated as the sun set, showering the assembled guests with golden sunlight. Alexander moves through the crowd, playing the role of proud father and successful businessman. He accepts congratulations and discusses market trends while keeping a close eye on his family. He noticed that Victoria always seemed to know where Richard was, and their paths crossed with an unnaturally high frequency. He observes Marcus hovering around Richard's social circle, laughing too eagerly at the older man's jokes. Sarah, who was usually focused on her cell phone, had her eyes darting back and forth between her mother and Richard with a certain nervous excitement. "Mr. Winston," a waiter approached, phone in hand. "There's an urgent call from the Beijing office." Alexander exits from a conversation about real estate values and heads toward a relatively quiet area of the Rose Garden. The call was brief, a minor crisis his team could handle, but as he ended it, voices came through the neatly trimmed hedges. Everything went perfectly. Victoria's voice was lowered but clearly audible. Alexander approached the hedge noiselessly. "Patient as ever, my dear," came Richard's voice, followed by a pronounced kiss. "We've been tampering with Alexander's legal documents for years. Real estate, company shares, a lot of things are in our name now." Alexander's hand clenches around his cell phone, but he stays still, keeping his emotions in check. 25 years of high-stakes business dealings taught him the value of waiting until he had all the information he needed. "Dad's such an idiot," Marcus' voice joined in, and Alexander's stomach lurched. "Always so focused on his precious company, never noticing how smart our real father is." Sarah's voice confirmed the integrity of the betrayal. "No one doubts anything," Richard said, "and the transfer of the Jensen property is the last big part. Once Alexander signs those papers tonight, everything will be legally watertight. After another year of careful maneuvering, we'll be able to finally drop the show." "I'm tired of playing the perfect wife," Victoria's voice dripped with contempt. "You know what he said this morning? He actually thanked me for building this place into a home, as if I haven't been plotting to destroy it all these years." "Patience, my dear." Richard's voice was full of smugness. "Alexander is really smart in business. I'll give him that. But he never understood that real power comes from controlling the legal framework. Every contract, every deed to a property, every corporate document, I was quietly revising. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late." "What about Emily?" Sarah asked. "She really loves Daddy. She could cause problems." "Emily's too caught up in her perfect little world to notice anything," Victoria said scornfully. "Besides, once it all comes out, she'll have to choose between keeping the trust fund and remaining loyal to her father. Money will always win out." Alexander has heard enough. He returned to the house wordlessly, his brain already calculating, planning. In his study, he opened his private computer terminal and connected to the estate security system. The cameras were added 3 years ago after a series of burglaries in his neighborhood. Victoria complained that they were tacky, but eventually gave up trying to remove them. Images appear on his screen. A midnight meeting in the garden, Richard's late-night visit while Alexander is away on business, his children sneaking papers in and out of his home office, every betrayal recorded in high definition. His phone vibrated with a response from the head of cybersecurity to his urgent request. Multiple unauthorized access points were found in our system, all from RG's law firm. Hundreds of altered documents were found in late folders. Want me to lock everything down? Alexander replied, surveillance only, record everything and give me a full report on Monday. He stood at the study window and watched the party continue below. Emily is dancing with her fiancé, genuinely happy and oblivious to the impending disaster. Victoria takes the lead in the center of her social circle, playing the perfect entrepreneur's wife. Richard is chatting with board members and may be looking for more angles to utilize. Marcus and Sarah make their way through the crowd, wearing their secrets like badges. Alexander pulls out his cell phone and dials a number he hasn't used in years. Jason, remember that favor you owe me? I need a forensic accountant's eye to look at something in confidence. Yes, it's urgent. No, don't send anyone to the office yet. I'll have everything ready by Monday morning. He ended the call and took a moment to straighten his tie and check his reflection in the window. The man looking back at him was not angry, but focused, determined. They thought they were clever, using his success against him, twisting his trust into a weapon. They're about to realize why Alexander Winston has survived every attempt to destroy his empire for the past 25 years. The party continued below, his family's betrayal hidden behind champagne toasts and smiles. Alexander straightened his shoulders, ready to go back to playing his role the victim in their eyes, the fool they thought he was. That's it for now. Monday will be here soon. Alexander, there you are. Emily's voice cut him off at the bottom of the stairs. Dad, it's time to do your speech. He embraced his daughter, the only thing of sincerity left in the house. Of course, sweetheart. Can't keep the guests waiting too long. As Alexander walked towards the garden, he passed Victoria and Richard, who were standing slightly too close, their confident smiles flickering as they saw him approach. Is everything okay, Alexander? Asked Richard, his tone concerned. You seemed a little preoccupied earlier. Never been better, old friend. Alexander's smile was genuine, though for a completely different reason than they thought. Never been better. Early Monday morning arrived as expected, with the accuracy of a well-crafted plan. Alexander Winston sits in his corner office on the 48th floor of the Winston Tower, watching Manhattan gradually awaken below. The events of the weekend had congealed into a cold resolve in his mind, and his thoughts were extraordinarily clear and focused. His administrative assistant knocked on the door and walked in. Mr. Winston, the Bar Association Ethics Committee is waiting on line 1. Plus, Jason Waters arrived early and is waiting for you in the conference room. Thanks, Janet. All other calls are on hold. Alexander picked up the phone, his voice steady and full of authority. Mr. Davidson, thank you for accepting my call on such short notice. The voice of the chairman of the Ethics Committee came through the receiver. You mentioned that there was evidence of serious misconduct regarding Richard Glover. Given your position in the business community, we will give this matter the highest priority. I'm sending the relevant documents. Alexander's mouse clicked. My team has compiled complete evidence of systematic document tampering, fraudulent transfers, and serious breaches of attorney-client privilege. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line as Davidson was receiving the file. Oh my God. He sucked in a breath. This is serious, Mr. Winston. This is beyond simple misconduct. This is criminal conspiracy. I'm well aware of that. I'm sure the Bar Association will deal with it appropriately. We will be convening an emergency committee immediately. Mr. Glover's license could be suspended as soon as this week, pending a full investigation. After ending the call, Alexander strides toward the conference room. Forensic accounting expert Jason Waters has been surrounded by laptops and documents of all kinds. The 60-year-old, gold-rimmed glasses-wearing expert has made a name for himself by uncovering the most complex cases of financial fraud. Alexander. Jason stood up and extended his hand. I've been reviewing the preliminary data since your call over the weekend. It's a pretty sophisticated scam that they've been planning for years. Let me see. Jason pulled up a series of complex charts. Richard has created a network of shell companies, all registered in your wife's maiden name or through an agent. Every time he handles an asset transfer for your legitimate business, he simultaneously creates a shadow transaction. Alexander scrutinized the intricate diagrams of arrows and corporate entity relationships. Jensen Realty is their grand finale. Jason points to a highlighted section. Once you sign those documents, your entire business asset portfolio is transferred to their control within 6 months. The paperwork is complete, legal, and virtually impossible to reverse unless fraud can be proven. While this was happening, Alexander's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from his cybersecurity supervisor. Full digital forensics completed. Discovered records of encrypted communications between RG and your wife dating back 5 years. All records have been archived. Alexander forwards this message to Jason. Add these to the evidence file as well. The board meets at 2. I want all the materials ready. The morning flew by in a hectic manner. By 1:30 p.m., Alexander's executive team had gathered in the main conference room, with Richard's usual seat conspicuously empty. Ladies and gentlemen, Alexander spoke as he stood at the head of the table. The information I am about to share will give you pause and will explain why I am requesting an immediate audit and termination of all contracts with Glover Law Firm. The entire presentation was well organized but unflinching. As each document was displayed and each recording played, the expressions of the board members shifted from confusion to shock and finally to anger. This exposure puts us all at risk, said Gerald Matthews, head of legal compliance, in a stern tone, and every contract Richard Glover handles needs to be re-examined. It's already underway, Alexander assured them, and I've asked Jason Waters to lead the legal audit. But there's more. He played home security footage showing those midnight meetings, those scenes of conspiracy in his own garden. Several board members visibly flinched at the intimate details of the betrayal. Jesus, Alexander, his most senior board member, Patricia Chun, whispered, "Your own family, business first." Alexander cuts off any sympathy. I need unanimous consent from the board to terminate all contact with the Glover Law Firm and initiate legal proceedings. The vote was immediate and unanimous. Meanwhile, across town, Richard Glover is sitting in his corner office, oblivious to the impending storm. His secretary came on the intercom. "Mr. Glover, the Bar Association is here. They say it's urgent." Richard straightened his tie, confident in his ability to handle any legal challenge. However, that confidence quickly dissipated when 3 serious-looking committee members walked in, followed by 2 forensic experts. "Mr. Glover," the lead investigator got right to the point. "We have evidence of serious ethical violations and potential criminal behavior. We need to examine your computer and all client files." "This is ridiculous." Richard was furious. "What gives you the right to dash? We have conclusive evidence of document tampering, client trust account abuse, and conspiracy to commit fraud." The investigator's voice brooked no argument, and your law license is suspended with immediate effect pending our investigation. Richard's law firm partners gathered in the conference room and watched through the glass walls as the technologist began backing up his hard drive data. "Do you guys know any of this?" Founding partner Thomas Reynolds questioned the others. "Any inside knowledge?" The crowd shook their heads in denial. "He has to go," Reynolds decided, "before this thing destroys the whole law firm." In the Hamptons, Victoria Winston was maintaining her social circle at her weekly tennis club luncheon when her cell phone vibrated. A text message from Richard sent chills down her spine. "The Bar Association is here. They know everything. Alexander knows. Delete everything immediately. Her hands shook slightly as she set down the mimosa cocktail. Around her, her social circle continued the boring banter about renovations and summer plans. Victoria, her friend Catherine touched her arm. You look pale. I have to go. Victoria stood up abruptly. There's a family emergency. She was only halfway there when another text came in, this time from Marcus. Mom, the law firm told me to take an immediate vacation. What happened? Followed by a text from Sarah. Dad knows. Henderson Law School called and said there's a problem with my application. What do we do? Victoria's carefully crafted perfect world is crumbling at an alarming rate. She tried to call Richard, but the call went straight to voicemail. She immediately called their private banker's number in the Cayman Islands. I'm sorry, Mrs. Winston, came the banker's deliberately neutral accent. Those accounts were written off last week. Mr. Glover has full authority. Victoria's perfectly manicured nails sink deep into the steering wheel. Richard betrayed her by running off with the money after all their careful planning. Back at Winston House, Alexander received an update from the team. He allowed himself a thin smile as he looked at the reports of Richard's suspension, his law firm in disarray, and his offshore accounts frozen. His phone lit up with Victoria's name, and he let it continue to ring until it went to voicemail. Emily appeared at his office door, pale but composed. Dad, can we talk? Alexander gestured for her to sit down. His daughter, the only honest being in the house, glimmered in the light with her engagement ring. Thomas's parents saw the preliminary report from the Bar Association, she said softly, and they're worried about the wedding. What do you want to do? Emily looked her father straight in the eye. I want the truth, the whole truth. Alexander pulled out a folder and handed it to her. Read it, take your time, and make your decision. As Emily read the document, her perfectly maintained expression gradually crumbled. Mom and Richard, is this all true? Marcus and Claire know too? Yes, the engagement party. They used it as a cover to try to get me to sign those papers. Yes. Emily's hand shook slightly as she closed the file. I have to postpone the wedding. Thomas understands. I can't. I can't celebrate while our family is being torn apart like this. You're not responsible for their choices, Alexander said firmly. I know. Emily stood up and straightened her shoulders, a posture so like her father's. I'll call Thomas's parents myself. They deserve to hear this from me. Alexander watched her leave, pride mingling with cold anger at his betrayer. At least one of his children inherited his integrity. His intercom rang. Mr. Winston, Mr. Jason is here with the full forensic report and is waiting for you to review it. Let him in. Jason walked in, thick book of reports in hand, his expression stony. It's worse than we thought. Richard hasn't just been helping your wife steal. He's been enriching himself from every account he's handled. This man has been running a sophisticated cross-client fraud scheme. Perfect. Alexander's smile was as sharp as a shark's. Send copies to the Bar Association and the district attorney's office. It's done. Jason hesitated. Your wife's involvement is also well documented. This will destroy her. She destroyed herself? Alexander turned to the window, his reflection hard and clear on the glass. She just doesn't know it yet. The following week unfolded like a perfectly executed business plan. Richard's law firm partners voted to remove him entirely in order to save the firm's reputation. The Bar Association accelerated its investigation, uncovering more evidence with every step it took. Marcus finds himself escorted out the door by a law firm escort, his promising career going up in smoke as the scandal widens. Sarah's law school acceptance was revoked pending an investigation for her role in document fraud. Victoria's carefully cultivated social circle begins to disintegrate, and as details leak out, her texts become increasingly desperate. Alexander, we need to talk. Please let me explain. You're ruining our children's future. He is not responding to all information. Richard tries to call an emergency meeting with the partners, but they refuse to see him. His access card has been deactivated, his email has been redirected, and his name has been removed from the law firm's website. In a final act of desperation, Richard shows up uninvited at Alexander's office. "Mr. Glover is here." Janet's voice was professional but tinged with concern, and he's quite insistent. "Let him in." Richard rushed through the door, his usual grace cracking. "Alexander, be reasonable. We can negotiate." Alexander continued to review the file without even looking up. "Yeah? Think of the children. Think of the scandal." That's when Alexander looked up, his eyes cold as frost. "Just like you thought when you were cheating on me with my wife? Like you thought when you taught my son how to commit fraud? Like you thought when you helped my daughter lie on her law school application? That's not what happened. Get out." Alexander's voice could freeze a blazing fire. "The next time we meet is in court." Richard's face contorted as anger erupted. "You smug bastard! How perfect and above board you think you are. Victoria came to me because you were always too busy with your precious company to notice her. Now I'm going to destroy you with your precious company." Alexander pressed the intercom. "Security, please escort Mr. Glover from the building. Permanently." As Richard is taken away, Alexander receives one last text from the head of cybersecurity. "Found it. The offshore account was emptied last week and all funds were transferred to a private account in RG's name. Your wife is screwed." Alexander allowed himself a moment of cold satisfaction. They thought he was a fool, too focused on business to see their betrayal. Now they will learn that it was the mall that taught him how to deal with traitors. The setting sun in Manhattan cast long shadows into Alexander's office window. In the growing twilight, he reviewed Jason's final report and prepared for the next phase of the counterattack. There will be no compromise, no negotiation, no mercy. They chose their path, and now they must face the consequences. The Bar Association's hearing room fell silent as the final judgment was read. Richard Glover, once one of Manhattan's most respected lawyers, watched his career crumble with every carefully worded phrase from the chairman of the Ethics Commission. In light of the overwhelming evidence of systemic fraud, document forgery, and serious violations of the attorney-client privilege, this board hereby orders the immediate and permanent revocation of Richard Glover's law license. All documents he has signed within the past 5 years will be subject to automatic review and potential invalidation. Alexander Winston sat in the back row, looking over the hunched shoulders of his former friend. His new team of lawyers, led by Alexander Torres of the law firm Wagner and Mitchell, is already taking notes on their tablets. "Every fraudulent transfer will be reversed," Torres whispered, "and delisting gives us unprecedented leverage." Richard turned and their eyes met. That mask of sophistication and sleekness had shattered, revealing the desperate man underneath. Alexander met his gaze expressionlessly, indifferent to the silent plea. A year later, Alexander stood in front of the window of his expanded office, now located on the top floor of the renamed Winston International Building. The scandal ultimately strengthened his business empire, and his ruthless handling of betrayal has become legendary in the business world. Emily walks in looking happy and at peace. Her wedding plans are back on track, made stronger by this delay. The Foundation's inaugural ethics symposium is next week, she reminded, and law schools are particularly interested in using our case studies. Alexander nodded. The Winston Foundation for Corporate Ethics rises from the ashes of betrayal to transform personal pain into professional purpose. How are Marcus and Claire coming along? Claire's community service at the Legal Aid Office is changing her perspective, Emily reports. And as for Marcus, he's struggling with the ethics program, but he's trying. I think they're finally realizing what they've lost. Where is your mother? Emily's expression turned cold and hard, lives in Queens and works as a receptionist. Richard's guilty plea can't help her social rehab. The news had spread that morning. Richard Glover, extradited from Mexico, had pleaded guilty to multiple felonies in the face of hard evidence. His attempts to blame Victoria for everything backfired completely after Alexander's team exposed his embezzlement from his own law firm. Alexander turned from the window and examined the empire he had built and defended. Betrayal cost him a wife and 2 children, but he became stronger, wiser, and more respected than ever. "Trust must be earned," he whispered, remembering the garden party that started it all. Emily touched his arm gently. "You taught all of us that lesson, Dad. It's just that some people learn it better than others." Alexander allowed himself a smile. The price of justice was high, but he paid it without hesitation. In the end, honesty proves stronger than betrayal, and truth is more powerful than deception. Mr. Winston, his executive assistant, knocked on the door. "The final report from the European M&A team is ready." For nearly 5 years, Winston International's expansion has never stopped. News headlines frequently appear: Winston International buys European construction giant for $4.8 billion to solidify global dominance. Alexander often thinks of the night that changed everything as he reads these stories. The Winston Foundation for Corporate Ethics now occupies 3 floors of the building, and its programs have trained more than 1,000 corporate executives and law school students. The walls of the foundation are lined with case studies, most notably a detailed analysis entitled "The Cost of Betrayal: Ethics, Trust, and Consequences in Corporate Law." The foundation has received requests from law schools across the country. The foundation's executive director, a former federal prosecutor, reported to him, "And your story has become the quintessential case study in professional ethics." What's the word from Henderson Law School? Alexander remembers Sarah's revoked enrollment. "They adopted our complete curriculum." The dean specifically mentioned the Glover case as a turning point in their ethics education. The board expanded, and the company tripled in size in the wake of the scandal. Alexander's decisive handling of the crisis attracted investors who were impressed by his integrity and strength. "European acquisitions have made us the largest construction company in the Western Hemisphere," his CFO reports, "and our business ethics have become a major selling point." In a small apartment in Queens, Victoria glares at her reflection in a cheap mirror, barely recognizing herself. Her designer clothes are long gone, and in their place are ordinary ready-to-wear. Her once perfect manicure now required her to take care of it herself, and the grays showing in her hair she could no longer afford to have professionally colored. Her cell phone, no longer the latest model, displayed a message from her current attorney: "Motion to modify divorce settlement denied." Judge cites continuing evidence of fraudulent participation. Richard Glover sits alone in his cell in the protective custody unit of a federal prison. The former lawyer had aged dozens of years in 5 years, his elegant charm replaced by bitter anger. His appeal was dismissed and the judgment was affirmed, with the delisting permanent. His last asset, the elegant Manhattan apartment, was seized and sold to compensate the victims. The final irony is that it was acquired by a Winston International subsidiary. Marcus visits the construction site of his latest project, proudly wearing a helmet with the team leader logo. He discovered his talents in the real world, earning respect through competence rather than connections. "Mr. Winston," his staff called him, and no one knew or cared about his relationship with the company's founder. He prefers it the way it is now. Claire facilitates a workshop for victims of fraud, and her own experience adds authenticity to her guidance. Her organization has helped hundreds of families affected by white-collar crime. Her faults turned into a mission. At Hampton Manor, Emily reviews wedding plans with her future mother-in-law, and their relationship grows stronger as they weather the storm together. The Henderson family came to appreciate the loyalty and integrity she showed during the crisis. As night falls in Manhattan, Alexander Winston stands in front of his office window, watching the city lights come on one by one. 5 years on, The betrayal that should have destroyed him has not only made his empire stronger, but has made his name synonymous with business ethics. The Winston Foundation for Corporate Ethics has trained over 1,000 corporate executives and law school students. Emily is about to redo her wedding in her Hampton stomping grounds. Marcus finds true value on a construction site, and Claire uses her experience to help other victims. And while Victoria lives in obscurity in her one-bedroom apartment in Queens, Richard grows increasingly emaciated in the protective custody of a federal prison. Alexander has a new picture frame on his desk with the Winston family's new motto: "Trust must be earned by effort, but betrayal must be met with the full force of the law." Those who tried to steal his empire ended up helping him build a dynasty. This is the price of betrayal and the triumph of integrity. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.